Diaspora Wars. Are African Americans and African immigrant enemies? That's a powerful a topic that we need to discuss. My name is Dr. Oteng, and my co-host is
Dr. Gifty Oteng.
Are African Americans and African immigrant enemies? We are going to do justice to this topic, and the views expressed here are more like experiential and academic. So don't take anything we say as religious and take it to the bank, or as representing the views of all African immigrants or African Americans for that matter, or all diasporans for that matter. We're just going to share some of the things we've heard, some of the things we have experienced, but obviously we haven't experienced everything, and we haven't talked with everybody to see what they think about this, right?
Yeah,
do you agree?
Yes. And I think I'm a little concerned about the topic overall, because are we really enemies? Why should we even talk about us being enemies in the first place?
Right, that's why it's a question. It says, are we enemies, as some purportedly say, or are our actions saying that we are living like enemies? And sometimes a question brings up some of the underlying tones that we may not have visited. So I don't think we are necessarily enemies, but what are some of the things that we do that potentially suggest that we are not living right, as brothers and sisters? And if we are, how can we strengthen that bond of friendship? And obviously, if we are not, what are some of the pathways to harness unity, which is mainly the focus of our show, to harness unity? So yes, the title is a little hard if you read it just like that, but hopefully it will make more sense as we go forward. So stick to the end of the show, because we have some points to discuss, and that would definitely make it more plain as we go forward. Do you agree with me on that?
Yes. So maybe their contribution and their suggestions may come up, so that maybe the question may be more clearer as we go through the discussion. So we are encouraging people to bring their thoughts and just stay with us so that we can all come to the same conclusion. Definitely.
So with that being said, we have some slides that we want to use to foster an effective discussion. So the first thing that we want to actually talk about is the history. What are some of the historical things that may pitch each of us against the other, or potentially also harness unity, right? And historically, we know that, for the perspective of African Americans, they have slavery. The legacy of slavery is something that is huge. And that potentially may inform what they think or how they live their lives as it pertains to the African immigrants. So that is one thing that we think is that it's generations of systemic racism is one thing that may impact the way they act towards their African immigrants or their brothers and sisters who are migrating from Africa, whether you are an African American or Jamaican or in a British Black or European Black. What are some of the things that may account for the way you behave or the way you act towards an African immigrant? One of them is that the legacy of slavery may have shaped your view of life. What do you think?
Yeah, and we can say that with Africans, it's more like colonialism, right?
Yes,
so the Africans, we were colonized. So our background may differ from African Americans that were enslaved. So the history brings up the different perspectives, the way that we approach life, or the way that we go about things may differ because of where we are all coming from.
Definitely.
So it's kind of one group was colonized and another group was enslaved. So the outcome or the way that we see the perspectives of life may differ from one group to the other. Right?
Definitely. And another thing is the different frameworks, as we may say, is that different frameworks of identity may have resulted as a result of our experiences, right? Our backgrounds are created fundamentally different ways of, and have created different ways of understanding, of ourselves and our place in the world because of our backgrounds, right? And while African Americans forged their identity through resistance, to American racism, identities of the African people or African migrants, as we said, are also forged through the colonial resistance that we may have experienced in the past, right?
Yes. So, like, if you compare the two, it may be about the same. So, like, the slavery, they fought that slavery resistance. So you can see that there has been resistance on both sides. So maybe you can say that the way that the slavery experience had been definitely differ from the colonial experience. So the two, you can see the resistance on both sides, but maybe the outcome or the experience or the way that the people felt may differ, right?
And more specifically, when we talk about what we call Jim Crow, which is historic narrative of the African American experience, that may have also done a lot to change the way African Americans in the diaspora actually, behave towards the African immigrants or African brothers and sisters, right? For the African Americans, Jim Crow and redlining, as well as multi-generational systemic racism, it's a huge thing. It's embedded in American institutions, and so the experiences are shaped by that. And for the African immigrants, as she said earlier too, it potentially is from what we think is slavery, right? And I'm sorry, colonialism. And colonialism has its own serious impact. But the key is that both of them have led to stereotypes. One group actually thinks the other group has some stereotypes against the other. I don't know how to say it, right? So African Americans have their own stereotypes of African immigrants. And then African immigrants also have their own stereotypes against African Americans. And this is what is leading to an unhealthy form of relationship, which I think is the reason for our discussion. So we will spend some time and talk about some of the stereotypes, if there are, which I think there are actually. And so that is what do you think on that?
Yeah, so I think with the stereotypes, we can say that one group have some idea, about another group. So the African Americans may have their own thoughts or what they think the Africans are like, and Africans will have their own thoughts about how African Americans are. So there are these stereotypes that need to be addressed.
Yes, because we cannot heal any differences or any problems without actually acknowledging that there are stereotypes. And some of the stereotypes, we don't have time to talk about them all, but some we have heard ourselves. Others we haven't heard ourselves, but at least we know they exist through the eyes of other people or what the other people say. And so those things inform the differences in how we treat each other. So it's a really interesting narrative if we look at some of the stereotypes that exist. When we start thinking about it, you probably haven't thought about it so much. But at least from my experience, every African immigrant has their own thoughts about who African Americans are. And I'm pretty sure, if we're going to be honest, African Americans also have their own thoughts about what African immigrants are, and even for the larger immigrant community. But in our discussion here, we're just going to limit it to African relationship and the stereotypes. So we're just going to talk about some of the stereotypes, which is some of them are a little bit more sensitive, but again, we are just messengers, and that's why we have given you a chance to comment in the comment below if you disagree or if you agree, and a healthy discussion. That is how things happen, right? We agree to disagree, and that's how we do it. That way it becomes interesting. So we're going to go on with some of the stereotypes that are existing. So we're going to start with the first one. So we're going to talk about the African American stereotypes that we need to confront with. What are some of the African American stereotypes concerning African immigrants? If you want to
So
start.
I think the first one that Africans really say about African American, the first point that they talk about is they are lazy.
Okay, so
and they
some
feel
Africans.
so entitled.
Okay, explain yourself.
Yes, so like as African, you come to this country and you can see the opportunities in this place. You know, you are ready to change your life because of where you're coming from. You can see all these opportunities out there, and you come in and you are comfortable, and you may start going to school, doing all that, you know, coming here, hard worker, and you're ready to, you know, live your life. Then you look around and you see your brothers and sisters, you know, the African Americans not doing the same. So in your mind, maybe due to ignorance or something like that, you feel like these people are lazy because I'm ready to work. I'm ready. I don't feel entitled. I feel like I've been given opportunity, you know, in this place, and I'm ready to work hard. So I'm coming in with that mentality, and I come and I look around and see African Americans not doing the same. So in my mind, I'm thinking that these people are lazy and they feel entitled.
Right, but the sad thing is you forget to know what experiences they have gone through, and you as an immigrant thinking you have opportunities. Yeah, you may feel it's opportunities, but to some of those, you know, to people who have been born here, who have endured years of discrimination and all that, you know, it's easy to quickly say that, oh, these people are lazy because you think that hard work you're doing is taking you somewhere. But that is not the case. And as a matter of fact, the fact that you see a few African Americans around you in the neighborhood not doing well doesn't mean all African Americans are not doing well. That's some of the short-sightedness of some African immigrants too. They think that, hey, because this and this and this person in this neighborhood is not doing well, they are all not doing well. Now, you go to some neighborhoods in Maryland, some places, you can see many African Americans doing extremely well. So that is, again, that's what we call it. It's a stereotype. Stereotype means it's a label. It's not true. It's just created to, again, drive us apart. And as we go forward, we are actually going to explain why these stereotypes are there. And it will baffle you that, you know, the institutions are there to make that happen so that we do not trust each other. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So yeah, you are definitely right, and I agree with you. Some Africans are quick to judge and say that, hey, these people are not serious about life. That's why I just came in and I'm doing well. And as a matter of fact, it's not just African immigrants. All immigrants may be thinking the same. Oh, we got these great opportunities and we just came and we did it. It's not like that. You got to be careful because you haven't experienced the experiences they go through. And as a matter of fact, because you see a few of them not doing well, doesn't mean they are also not all doing well. Or they are lazy. They are not lazy. But we're going to, again, speak more to that. So I think I agree with you on that point. That is the first thing, a stereotype that is in the immigrant community. I'm not going to even just link it to African immigrants. In the immigrant community, about our brothers and sisters of African origin who have been here for longer than we have, right? And then the second stereotype is that the African Americans are disconnected from Africa. They are disconnected from Africa. Or I should say they don't have any lineage to where they come from. You know, it fails to acknowledge the fact that, you know, slavery deliberately severed cultural, you know, linkages, you know, to their homeland, to the extent that even, you know, it's become a slur to tell an African American that go back to Africa. It's like you're insulting them, which shouldn't be. If somebody says that and you're proud of where you come from, it is good. but the legacy of slavery has severed that relationship. They have lost their names, their cultural identity. In fact, it's until recent breakthroughs in DNA and genetics that people have been able to trace their roots to where exactly they come from in Africa. Otherwise, they would not know. And it's no fault of their doing, but a lot of African immigrants do take that as a blanket label and say that, oh, those people, they don't want to know where they come from. They have severed their relationships, which is not always the case. As a matter of fact, as we speak, a lot of African Americans are going back to Africa and linking. We have places where people are actually settling, especially in Ghana. We have African Americans that are settling there and doing very well. Basically living their lives there as families and investing and doing good. So they want to know where they come from, and they are building new relationships. There are some programs, I think there's some called Afrochella, Christmas programs that bring entertainment and, basically uniting Africans from the diaspora on African soil to have fun and do programs, So it is a blanket stereotype, which again is not always true. And you remember in the presidency of Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana, he established the Year of Return, in which Africans in the diaspora were invited back home to Africa and then be part of the continent in investment, culture, and the rest. And that has been going on since then. Every year, people go back. And so it is not true that they don't want to go back or they don't want to have a relationship or they don't want to have anything to do with the continent. It is not true. But we, Africans
or immigrants
have that idea that they don't want to be linked, which is a stereotype again. What do you think? Or you want to add anything to that?
And another one is like lack of achievement.
That's another stereotype.
When we come in, we are quick to say that, oh, these people have not achieved anything, because the media out there do not really, come up with names of people that have achieved anything. And all that we are hearing is the negative things about African Americans. So if you are not careful, you'll be quick to judge and to conclude that, oh, these people have not achieved anything. So we tend to label them as people that have nothing, they have not achieved anything, they have not accomplished anything, forgetting about the historical events that took place, that has really kept them down and that has not really highlighted their achievements out there. If you really take your time and go through the history or through the books, you'll be shocked or marveled about how much achievements these people have got with all their struggles, the things that they've been able to achieve. But it's not out there, it's not glorified or said about. So you come in and you're not careful, you'll be judged to label them.
You'll be quick to label them,
You'll be very quick to label and say that, oh, these people are non-achievers. They have not achieved anything. That would be a wrong thing to say, because that's not all the story out there. Because they are not saying it and it's not being celebrated. So people tend to look down on African Americans, thinking that they are non-achievers, but that's not true.
And the thing is, with that, in addition to that, there are actually some great scientists, great social liberators. We always hear about just Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, W.B. Du Bois, and a few of those, who fought for the struggle for emancipation, a struggle against Jim Crow, or struggle against all those, mistreatment and institutional racism and stuff like that. But in science, in the field of science, there are great achievers. If you want, we don't want to spend this time to go through all that. But the inventors that are there, but again, they are not celebrated. People don't, some of them even create certain innovative ideas in science, but again, because of the system, their names are hidden. If you did a research under a professor and you came up with something, a professor's name will be published, especially if you are an African American, and you wouldn't ever hear their names. I heard of one African American that invented, hydrogen-powered cars, using water that, instead of like using lithium-ion batteries to power cars or using gasoline as an invention by an African American. I don't remember the name. And it is on the quiet. Nobody's saying anything until it becomes big known, and whoever championed the release or the use becomes, the name out there. And there are several other things that they have achieved. But if you are not educated, especially if you are not somebody who is educated, who reads a lot, you would just think that they don't do anything. And that is a stereotype that is, again, perpetuated by the system so that they will keep looking down on themselves. And then, those of us who are also from Africa will also keep looking down on ourselves, because if you know you are good, you potentially will lift your shoulders and begin to do great things. But if we keep telling you that you can't do anything, then of course you will become low and keep yourself low and not amass to much or achieve anymore. But yeah, it's a stereotype that has to be bashed. It has to be completely removed. We have to celebrate those people, that have done a lot in the field of science, in the field of medicine. I don't want to mention names because I'm going to, actually on both oceans, across the oceans in the Atlantic, both from Africa and then also those in America, like African Americans and also Native Africans, the inventions that we have done, they are not said because, again, it is a systemic. It's not to celebrate you for you to feel so good about yourself. And we understand that's the world order. It's not just in America, it's everywhere, because of the history of our existence. It is going on. So that label must also be squashed. That stereotype that they have not achieved anything is wrong. I mean, think about how much they have progressed since slavery, since the abolition of slavery until now. Less than 100 years. But look at how much they have progressed to the extent that even one of them has become a president. Talk about, a very minor group of people. If you talk about American population, African Americans are I think they are the least in terms of numbers. But they have always led change, whether it is civil rights, voting rights, even upholding the Constitution. It's always been on the shoulders of the African American. But immigrants don't see that. Uneducated immigrants, I should say, because at this point I can be clear. If you are educated, you know. And that is what we think is one of the stereotypes that has to be dealt with in the African community about our brothers and sisters of the Americas who happen to be from Africa. You have anything to add to that? Or
I think
we can go for it. All right, so with that being said, we don't want to spend all the time on just the stereotypes on the African Americans. Let's go now to stereotypes which are also on the Africans, the African immigrant stereotypes that we also need to confront. So it's another thing that is also happening, right?
Yes. So I think the first one that I would like to talk about would be the African Americans look at the Africans as being arrogant and elitist, right? They feel like they are so like up there, they are cocky, and they think that their culture should be celebrated. And, they feel good about themselves, and they see African Americans see Africans as being arrogant.
Yeah, that's one group, though. Another group also looks down on African Americans, but we'll go to that after your point. Yeah.
So that could be the misinterpretation of cultural pride. Because as we talked about Africans being colonized, though they were colonized, they kept to their ethnic culture. So they did not lose their ethnicity and their culture. So they are stuck with it, and they have that cultural or national pride. So when they move from Africa and they come here, they want to hold on to that. They celebrate their culture. You can see them wearing their clothes, being excited about their foods. Even they don't want to go of the way that they eat, because they are proud of their culture and they hold on to that. So somebody looking from outside may see them as being arrogant. So that can be something, a stereotype, because you don't know the whole story. You tend to conclude that these people are arrogant, or they feel like they are all up there and they are elites in their own small way. But when they look from outside, they feel like you are nobody. So you should carry yourself as such. You should look down upon yourself, because for them, they see Africa as a place of misery and turmoil, and
For
all
who?
the African Americans see Africans, that way. So when they get to know us and they can see that, no, we really cherish certain things, and we value our culture, so they see us as being arrogant and elitist.
That's very sad too, right? Because you would think that would be something that they would celebrate and actually try to enjoy, because when you are able to feel linked to your culture, that is when people try to respect you more than to ignore your original culture. So maybe that's something that they can look back on and change, because if you look at all the other immigrant groups, the like say the Chinese Americans or the Japanese Americans or all the other groups, the Hispanic Americans and all that, none of them try to alienate themselves from the original culture. They all try to look like at least where they come from, and they feel a sense of pride in that, so they link to it. So I think that looking at Africans who are also celebrating their cultures and thinking they are proud, it's not the best. I would think that if anything, we should celebrate them and feel good about them, so that you could also boast that you also have culture from where you come from.
But they can't relate to that culture, because it was taken away from them. Right?
Yes. It was taken. It was, it's a sad case, and it's not easy as we are saying it. But I think we have to start from somewhere. And one of these, the way we start is some of these conversations. How do we link those cultures? I know, yes, they are fully Americans, and even some of these Africans who have moved here are fully Americans now. But it's always good to always have a place where you can, because European Americans, they look back to Europe and they celebrate, they wear their ties and everything because it's from Europe, right? And it's fine. It's become the norm. But then if an African wears these traditional African dresses into a place, he may be looked down as a native, look weird, you know what I'm saying? So on one way, they feel like we are proud to do that. On the other side is looking down. But let's take that too.
Yeah.
To make it fair. Some of the African Americans also look down on Africans, African immigrants. They look at them with disdain, and it's sad, because sometimes you don't know if they actually are doing it on purpose or if it is something that is coming out not knowing. I mean, if you see an African, don't look down on them because they are from Africa. You don't look down on anybody for that matter. Because remember, when people look down on you, you feel discriminated against. So why would you look down on another person, especially somebody who comes from a place where you were taken from? You should actually appreciate them. But some, sadly, it's a stereotype there. They look on you as a native, tribal people. Look at what kind of language are they speaking, looking at them with disdain, discriminating potentially against them, and not even becoming friends with them because they feel weird. They look weird. They look too native or that kind of thing. So that is another stereotype on Africans or African immigrants that work against them, work against African Americans and against the African immigrants themselves. So it's not something that we can play with, and that it's a stereotype that needs to also be bashed. I don't know if you have anything to say on that.
Yeah, and we can say that maybe if we try to understand the Africans, because it's a new environment altogether, and they are coming in. So that's a coping mechanism. That's the way that they are able to cope, just to hold on to their culture. So that's the only time that they can celebrate their culture, which they don't want to lose. So if you see them, acting certain way, it's not because they are arrogant or they just want to do anything. They just want to have a way to be able to survive on this new environment. So that can serve as a coping mechanism for them in the new environment.
And it's not easy to easily assimilate as soon as you get to the US or wherever you are, whether you are in the UK or wherever. You know, you've been wearing this agbaja thing or this traditional clothes all your life, and you expect to change and completely be wearing only jeans and t-shirts. It may take some time, you know, so it takes time for the culture to assimilate into it, you know, into the Western culture. So our brothers and sisters on the other side should be able to look at us in a welcoming light rather than to, you know, think that we are arrogant. That's why we are not wearing jeans and tops and we dress too much, that kind of thing. You know, you're too proud of your culture. Let that culture thing down a little bit. You know, let yourself loose. You are in America, you know, assimilate, you know. Stop speaking loudly in public and talking about speak English in public, you know. Yeah, it's all good, but definitely let them be, because eventually they learn themselves how to assimilate. And it's good for you to have, you know, a person that looks like you that seem to feel original. You know, I don't know if that word is a good word to use, so that at least you can know that you are from somewhere, than to completely look down on them or look at them and say they are proud because of what they are doing. It's not like that. And we understand the experience is different because you don't have that link anymore.
Yeah.
You lost your names, you lost those things. But I would think that, you know, these African universities, colleges will begin to adapt some of these things and teach. You know, that way it will make more sense, and it will make that a friendship, it will forge better friendship and relationships, because we need them and they need us.
Right.
You know,
we need each other.
We need each other to survive, and not just that, to progress in that respect. You think we can go forward?
Yes.
So the other thing, the other stereotype is siding with whiteness. African Americans think that the Africans are quick to side with whiteness. And you want me to explain? Or yeah, so by whiteness, and even, in fact, it's even in the African American communities too. Sometimes if you go to college, you know, you go to high school, you go to college, you move to a good neighborhood, some African Americans, even if you are African American, they would say that you think you are white. You are playing the white card. You are trying to be like white. As if only white people should, you know, go to college and live in better neighborhoods and move from bad neighborhoods to, you know, to good neighborhoods. There's nothing white about it. It's just trying to do well. So that's another negative stereotype, in which I say that it's not just against Africans or African immigrants. It's also against African Americans who try to strive to do better, you know, and move out of, you know, communities that are poverty-stricken, you know, drug-related, you know, crime and violence, and they try to move away. They look down on you, or they have a label that you are trying to play white. So I think that's one stereotype that they have for Africans. And it's natural for African immigrants who migrate here. Remember, an immigrant that has migrated here is one of the, I don't want to say one of the people who are, you know, on a journey to better themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't come here. If they just want to, you know, just live life anyhow, they will relax. So if somebody has migrated across the Atlantic and come to a place like America or the UK or wherever, you got to know that that person is there for a reason. And so they will try and go to college. They will try and live in the neighborhood. They have a reason to leave their mom and dad, or sometimes even their children, sometimes even their spouses, to come. They are not going to just live. They are striving to do better. And doing better shouldn't be a white thing. It's a humanity thing, no matter where you are. But I think it's a label that they give to the African immigrants who
and
go
I
to
think
college.
they label them that way because they feel like they don't really know the system. You know, so if you really understand the system, you shouldn't be quick to side with the whites. So when they see the Africans doing that, they are like, these people are, you know, are siding with the whites. There should be a little clash here and there. There shouldn't be like a fight or something, a confrontation with them. We shouldn't be too agreeable, you know, with the things that they're saying, because we don't know the system, we don't know the culture. So they tend to label the Africans as being too white because they are not familiar with the environment as much as they do. So that tends to be a stereotype. And I think another stereotype too will be because the Africans don't understand racism. You know, so like they are quick to say that, oh, these people don't know what had happened. So there is a label on the Africans that they don't get it. They don't understand where we are coming from.
Even discriminated against, you still work. You still do it. You know.
Yes. So they think that, oh, these people don't know how much we have suffered. They don't really get how much they've discriminated against us. But we may not know, because there are certain words that when it's spoken to me, I don't get offended. So maybe I can agree with them. Like, you know, you being the N word. When somebody tells me that, I don't get,
you don't get easily
I don't
offended.
feel anything, you know. But if you really understand the history
of what they have endured,
you know, so you wouldn't take it lightly at all. But somebody can tell me that and can get away with it, because I wouldn't have the same.
Where do you come from? Right from hearing you, you know, where you come from, where's that accent coming from? You know, indirectly letting you know you're not from here, even though you're a U.S. citizen, but they just want to point you to a place that you actually are not from here. You know, no matter how many years you've been here, it could be 80 years, 40 years, and they will always, those are all minor things we see. But again, like she said, because our experiences are different, we may not all of us, we may not take it, you know, so seriously like you would. And so you would think that we don't understand racism. Right. We do, but sometimes
because of our different experiences, we may not interpret it easily, the same way.
Because it would hit an African American if somebody just told them, where do you come from? You know, trying to point to them that they are not from here. It would be a sad case. You can be pointed in the face because what do you mean? They are from here, you know? And certain minor things that come across and we don't take offense with, again, it's the experience. The same way with our experience, we were colonized, or African immigrants who have moved abroad, they were colonized for years, you know? And the system of colonialism is different from slavery and Jim Crow. In a colonial system, you know, the Europeans were on top. They make you do all you want to do. They will just take their wealth out, you know. But in American system, the slavery and Jim Crow, you know, even though in Jim Crow they say that live here and we live here, separate by equal, it wasn't equal, and they could see it, and so people would fight and resist. But in the African, you know, at that time, you know,
there was no resistance.
Unless you were in the government, you wouldn't even know that somebody's cheating you. They were just siphoning all the wealth out. And so your experience is relaxed.
Right.
You know, you just deal with your poverty and make sure as long as, you know, but for you were dealing with it head on. Your neighbors, people you would demonstrate and people want to kill you. You know, you'll be discriminated against at work. It's real. You saw it hand, you know, to face. You see it right there and then. And so your experiences make you react quickly to it. Our experiences, we're laid back and then we fight our way through it.
Right.
Just like we fought to get independence in all those African countries. So it's understandable that a stereotype exists, that we don't understand racism and all of that. But definitely it is a unique perspective and stereotype that we also have to deal with, because not all of us don't understand. Some people definitely can be offended if you talk to them in some way. But for the most part, people are laid back, especially because you're an immigrant. You don't want to cause trouble. You know, most immigrants are peaceful, you know, and we just take things easily. But you cannot, because you are from here and you don't want to be dealt with in that respect, right? You are. All right. So I think that is a good place to go to the next one. What do you think?
Yeah.
All right, so what is the next thing that we are going to talk about then? We are saying that the stereotypes have some roots. So the roots of our stereotypes, you know, these harmful stereotypes didn't just emerge from nowhere. You know, what you believe, what we believe about you, they didn't just come from nowhere. It's a systemic thing, as I was saying. They are planted and nurtured by forces that profit from our division. So if we are going to continue to look at each other with some kind of an eye, it helps the division. And as long as we are divided, the worse we become. Because if we can put our differences aside and live as brothers and sisters, we can do huge things. I mean, imagine rich billionaires from the United States, African American origin, going back to Africa to set up huge companies. Look at how good that would do. But if you're looking down on your African immigrants because you feel like they are proud, guess what? You're not going to probably do that. So they are there to basically harm us all, and it is not what we want to do. And the question we need to ask is, who benefits? Who benefits when we are fighting each other? Who is the ultimate beneficiary when we are fighting together? All right?
Yep.
And this leads to what we think is the main reason, which is what we call the mother-minority trap. The mother-minority trap. You want to talk about?
So the tactic that they use, to trap us as minority here is they pitch us against each other. They pitch us against each other. So they will say something like, immigrants are hard workers than African Americans. So they're saying that, the immigrants they praise them for being hard workers over African Americans, and they are labeled they are lazy. So when they pitch us against each other, then one group will, feel like there is a competition between the two. And that's a trap that they are putting us in so that we don't really come together as one people. So when this trap is set, there is always, how do we say it? Like animosity, against each other. So I see this person as an enemy, and this person is not like me because they are praising me as an immigrant. And because of that, I tend to look down on the African American, thinking that they are lazy and they don't work as hard as we do. So that tactic is not really benefiting us as one people. It's dividing us. So that's something that we have to pay attention to as Black people, African Americans and immigrants. We are all one people. So if we don't pay attention, we are going to really fight each other. And that's a trap.
Yeah, and the impact of this minority trap is it creates resentment between the groups.
Yes.
And then, we should be actually natural allies. Imagine, if I am an African and I migrate to the US, the person that should welcome me and be willing to open their doors to me is the African American. Because they can, if nothing at all, they look like me. If I take my traditional dress off and I wear jeans, we are the same, right? So you would think that they would be the one. But then if that tension is created to pitch you and say that, these people, they are this, they are that. For example, when it says that the immigrants are taking Black jobs, if you are a Black person and you see a Black immigrant, you're going to hate these people are taking my jobs. And so look at that. That is pitching one group against each other.
Yeah.
When it's not actually the case, But again, it is the minority trap. It creates that clash between groups, and set up some hierarchy. Indian immigrants feel this way, African immigrants feel this way, Hispanic immigrants feel this way. So there are classes. Always everyone trying to, beat each other and become more white so that they will get more favor. That is a trap.
If you think about it, we don't even have British American. We don't have Polish American. We don't have,
German American,
Russia American. So if you think of the Europeans, they are white. They're considered whites. But when it comes to Africans, now we have African American and we have Black American. Why should that be? How come that the white is considered white and the Black is not considered Black? So they tend to divide us and create something that will cause us to fight each other and not to see ourselves as one people and be able to help and welcome one another. So if On the other hand, when the African Americans, now that we are inviting them to come over to Africa, when they go over there, we are listening to videos, right, about how when they get there, they feel so welcome. You know, they feel so accepted. And somebody was saying that they feel at home. They feel like they have come back home. So that welcome should be reciprocated when we come here to America, to the African Americans. But these people have tried to divide us so that we see ourselves as not one people, but as enemies, which is a trap.
It's a
and
trap.
We have to pay attention to that.
It is definitely a trap. And we got to pay attention to it, because that's divide and conquer right there. If you are divided and you pitch each other, you pitch one group against the other, then the common thing that could make you guys grow together becomes eroded because you are fighting each other. And that is exactly what we need to fight against. So we definitely need to move on to a place where we don't do that. And the other thing is that there's another group of people who do that, and that is the media. The media is another one that is responsible for some of these things, right? If you look at the news, in fact, that's one thing that I remember before when I migrated here first. One of the things that baffled me was the way the media portrayed Africa. Oh my goodness. I mean, today is better because of internet, but in those days, you know, you couldn't watch any YouTube. There was no YouTube videos for you to see these great mansions and streets in Nigeria, or Lagos or Accra, for you to see that there's even a place like that. I mean, I can tell you, somebody actually asked me, so you guys actually live on trees?
How?
Somebody, and this is 1998. Somebody asked me that question here in the US, because the media has portrayed Africa as so bad, so bad. You know, it's the only thing that is published or said about Africa, it's the bad news. Nothing good comes from there. And again, that is another way to keep the Black people feeling inferior, because if you know where you come from is good, then you're going to be proud about yourself. But if we constantly bombard you with images of where you come from as the worst place you have come from, then already, you are going to be depressed.
Yeah.
Because you feel like, already you are being told you are not good enough. And where you come from is on fire. So where else can you, and that is why it is very important for them to, begin to change the narrative and avoid these systemic portrayals of Africa. Thank God for some YouTubers who are showing Africa now. Now people can stay here and look at the great. And if you haven't, and you are watching an African American, try it. Watch Wade Maya, whoever else who covers Africa, and see how beautiful it is. Because the media, they will tell you only the bad stuff. And if you feel good about where you are from, it boosts your confidence. Right. And then, bringing it to our discussion, you will relate to your people who come from there better. And the animosity will go down because you feel good about somebody who comes from where you come from, because you know where you come from is good. And I'm telling you, we are from there. And if it was that bad, we would tell you. And ask your brothers and sisters who have visited Africa and see. It's not as bad as the news media would tell you. They fuel these things with it's like, I mean, and the person that asked me, I told them, and I flew on the airline that landed on a tree. That's ridiculous. And I'm not kidding. Somebody did it. And it's not their fault. Because the media has conditioned them to believe a certain narrative. Until now. The first time I saw a skyscraper in the news here is when there was a terrorist bombing in Nairobi in the 90s. I think it was in the early 2000s or 90s. Right. And I'm like, the first time they're showing that there are tall buildings in Africa that were bombed. That was because it was bombed. Otherwise, they will only show you the Maasai people who are walking in dust. They will show you places where people are being afflicted with flies and hunger. That's the only thing that you see. So the media is doing a lot to separate us. So the narrative is there. And so it is something that we have to, have to open your eyes and make yourself know. Thank God for the internet right now, you can go online and search and see things for yourself. So you won't have to be always relying on this thing right now.
Yeah, and also like on TV, if you the war-torn areas, you see the children that are barefooted with the protruding stomach, and covered with flies, and you see the mothers lying like on the beach, like you can see that there is poverty everywhere. But the person that asks you about how you got to America, they forget that when the people are going there, to video and to take pictures, they take plane and they land in an airport.
They were asking about living on trees.
How?
And I don't blame them. Again, it's the media. That's what I'm saying. Even here today, you go to any of these major places, you will never see a tarred road or a skyscraper or a beautiful house shown on TV, in the news. No. I'm challenging you right now. You go and search on CNN or any of these major places. They will not show you. The only time they will show you if there was a bomb there and they're covering, then you see, there was a tall building there.
Even that one, they won't highlight it.
Yeah, they won't highlight it. They will just talk about the bad thing. And again, maybe it's unconscious, but I feel like it's a conscious and deliberate way to put people thinking bad only about Africa. I mean, in the US, you have some bad places, but when we see US on TV, I never saw those bad places. So again, it's deliberate too. I only saw New York City, the deliberate tall skyscrapers and stuff in the movies. They will show you these buildings, and you are like, oh my goodness. But they don't show you all the things. So it's not a fair comparison. And again, it's the media who is doing that. I don't think they have been paid to do that, but either consciously or unconsciously, they are pitching us against our brothers and sisters. And that leads it to another reason why these stereotypes are there, which is the scarcity mindset. We don't want to spend too much time there, but that is another one that we need to talk about, the scarcity mindset. You want to start with that one, me too?
Yes, so with the scarcity, they have created this scenario that we have a very small space or small slots, few slots for minorities, So when they create the scenario and in a class of 100, they want to take only 5 minorities, it becomes very competitive, So when you are in such environment, there is always competition. Few people are chosen, so I want to be part of the few. So I'm not going to help my brother. I'm not going to help my neighbor, because if I help them, there is going to competition. They are going to compete with me for that small slot. So if you're in high school, you're going to get into college, and they are taking only 5 in the Ivy Leagues colleges. There is likely that I'm going to keep to myself, study alone, so that I will be picked.
So basically, there becomes the competition between African immigrants and African Americans, right? Because if it's giving 5 slots to minorities, and minorities happen to be African Americans and all other minorities who are here,
Asians,
yes, then it becomes a competition,
right?
And so the African Americans become pitched against other minority groups, which it's again really sad, but it shouldn't be. Now they're saying that it's stopped. It's just merit based. But again, if you have a parent or uncle or somebody who has donated there, you get treatment. So it's not really merited. It's just the affirmative action being removed. But those who have the means will still be able to get their way. And there's still going to be a competition for minorities who are trying to get into such places. So academic quotas, not as much anymore because of that, but it's still happening, right? And then we have what we call the corporate tokenism, right? Where, every place they will put one black person there
in the room, right?
In the room, or a board. Always make sure there's one there. Even in the movie, sometimes I watch it and it's so funny. They'll make that one black person be the judge, or that one black person be the good cop, and everybody else is white or everybody else is another race, just to show that we are giving some slot. But the key is that when you just make it just one, then you make competition so great. Why not open it up for more? Competition becomes a lot. And then the immigrant who is also black becomes the person who is looked at as a competitor, potentially taking your slot. And that's pitching us or pitching them against us, which is all not good for our unity, which would eventually be what we need to do. So hopefully they'll change. But until it changes, we got to be smart about thinking about these things and fighting them, peacefully, so that we become the brothers and sisters that we are. What's the other one?
House and assets, right? So like there's a red lining, so there are certain zip code that when you stay, you are regarded more than other zip codes. So there will be a red line, artificial line, but if you're not from here, you don't really see it. Right?
And then the black people can go there. But, if you are trying to buy a property, it will be limited for you to, even the agents may not take you to look at properties over there because they feel like, you don't belong there.
Yes, you don't belong.
And that is a sad case. That's a sad case.
And limited financial resource.
Recently, the new government that we are in did away with all those benefits that had been set up for minority businesses, which helped not just black people, but even, white women, but they took it out and said that federal government is not going to help anybody like that. It's just going to be bidding or whatever. It's for everybody, which it would be good if everybody was playing by the same rules, but again, when you have restrictions as to who will get what, how many people will get what in terms of the minority groups, then the competition becomes high, and then people become, thinking that others are enemies because you are blocking their chances, which may not actually be the case. It's just because the chances are limited. Any other group becomes an enemy, and unfortunately, that is what some people think, right? So what is the next one? So what is the real cost of these stereotypes and these things that we are seeing among these groups of people? The real cost is in a lot of ways, but we're going to run through them because of time. The first one is economic impact, right? Our division actually blocks us from working and harnessing our potentials together in business partnerships and the rest. If we are divided, we can't do anything together. I see the movie Coming to America, right? Look at this rich African prince coming to America. Imagine if I had brought billions of dollars from where I came from. I would be willing to, work with other African Americans here to make big business. But if I have a stereotypical view of you, then of course I'm not going to do that. In the same way, if I had brought some intellect, I brought some ideas, and you could harness my idea because of where I'm also coming from. An African American will say that, oh, these people, they are proud. These people, they are poor. These people, look at where they come. Then it will not happen. So it is economically, it is actually working against us. And then also we have...
and also on the other hand, if somebody is rich here as African American, right? Because there is not that... a unity, or we don't regard each other so much. There is no way that they are going to look into the continent Africa to go and invest over there. Because they don't trust us. They don't know much about our culture. They don't care so much about us. So getting the money here, they don't see any reason to invest anywhere because they don't feel like they belong, or we are not one, or we are not together. They'd rather stay here and do things here, disregarding their roots, because they don't see us as one. So not only on one side, the other side too is also impacted economically.
And you have people like Bill Gates, who has dedicated his philanthropy into Africa. Recently, he has actually promised more investments in Africa, for maternal health, to help people give birth and not die. This is a rich white person who is doing that. I'm yet to see a rich black person investing in a place like that in Africa. I haven't seen any.
I think I have, though.
Who?
Oprah invested
Oprah is doing good. Yes, you're right.
in the whole girls program
Yes.
in South Africa. South Africa. I think she adopted whole group, a whole class, something invested
We need
in
more
the girls.
than that, though. We need
so
more
we have
because there are
other
several rich people.
here.
I mean, some of these people can open whole universities, whole medical clinics. You know, I know there are some people doing it. I've seen another video on YouTube where somebody also built a whole hospital. Some people are doing it, but these are some of the things that fostering unity could bring development across the continent, and not just there, but here too.
Right.
But we need to be active in doing that. So let's talk about the next one is what the real cost is of political power. Imagine if we forged unity, and you have a voting bloc in the African immigrant population backing, the African American cause in terms of elections and stuff. Because African American cause is our cause. Our children are African Americans. Well, first generation may be African immigrants, but once they are born here, they are you.
Yeah.
And so we should be able to harness this voting bloc. And the way to do that is to foster unity, right from the get-go. But if we get ourselves removed into separate corners and blame each other for certain things that don't even exist, then we lose that power in terms of political to be able to do things together and win some of the things that we want to talk about.
And also, if we see like the immigrants as whitewashed, there are certain policies that we will feel that they are going to go do against us because we don't feel like we are one. But if we think as one people, it's likely that our policies may align and we may go for the same thing, and we increase our voting power and our power here. But because overall, the population, I think you said that we are not that many. But if we see the Africans as part of us, we increase our power here for sure.
Definitely. Then that's something that we really need to look at. All right. So the next real cost of this division is the real cost to family and social bonds. The real cost to family and social bonds. That's another huge one. I rarely see intermarriages between the African and the African American families. Few happening. And I know of a few since my being here that has been successful. Sometimes, I know marriages don't last as long here generally. So that being said, some of these marriages don't last at all, and they are not a lot. To be frank, they are not a lot. And so that is something that is costing us because of these stereotypes that we have of each other. We don't date ourselves. We don't marry ourselves. We have certain prejudices against, if you marry an African American woman, they are tough. They are going to make sure. I'm saying it because that's what we hear, right? It's one of these, what do you call it? Stereotypes, But being tough just basically means that they're educated, they know their rights, which an African man may be afraid of because they want a woman whom they can basically say that, hey, sleep here today, and an African American woman may not do that, right?
So I think the men are even warned against African American women because they feel like they are controlling and they can really make your life a hell if you go for them. So they are one that don't even venture because these people are very, can be very tough. Right. And you can't control them as much as you can control an African woman, And the way that the African man has been brought up, they have their own way, the style of relationship. So when they come and interact or have a relationship with African American, they feel like that is not easy at all. So because of that, we are not really coming together. The bonding is not strong socially.
So we
are not intermarrying to feel like we are one people.
And that's the cultural. It's coming from the cultural. It's taking a while for African men to be able to accept women and their role. Woman going to work and a man going to work. Traditionally, it wasn't like that, as you can tell. Africa's culture is a little, on the behind side, if I should say. in terms of what an American or Western culture would say about marriage. We believe something a little backwards. I don't know if I'm using the right words. People don't bash me in the comments.
It's not backwards.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it. Yeah, it's still in the in the pre modern era. I think it's better said that way. So yeah, so the roles that we give to women may be slightly different from what the culture in America is. In America, we are equal, but in Africa, we may think that women's role is sometimes a little less. We the men are the money makers. We got to go to work and bring the money. We got to take care of the home, which some African American women really love. They want to also be taken care of. But then, at the same time, the African men may not want you to speak too much if they are taking care of you. They would rather that you be quiet and take care of the home, right? So, that being said, the cultural differences contribute. It's not just the stereotype; it's the cultural differences. But if you can work and maneuver through that culture, then it wouldn't be something of an issue to deal with. But again, that is a real cost. That's a cost, and I think one of my cameras just went. That's what I was saying. So we're going to go here and use this one going forward. All right, so the next one that we can talk about is what we've talked about, the family thing. Now let's do, how do we build the bridges? We're going to conclude over the solutions, right? The solutions, building bridges. And they say that personal actions that you can take. We've talked about the problems a lot, but what can you do as a person to stop some of these problems? Personal actions. Change begins with individual choices. Small steps can create powerful shifts, in our communities. That is what has to be done. You have to yourself be willing to make a change. You cannot sit down and want everything to be perfect when you are not doing anything about it. And so the first thing that we can do on personal level is to acknowledge each other, acknowledge the pain that we have. First, listen to each other, and then judge later, or don't even judge at all, right? So acknowledge the pain that the African American experience has been. If you're an African, if you acknowledge that, you understand them more, because there are certain things that we have to recognize that both groups have had historically difficult traumas, whether it's from slavery or from colonialism. And so once you acknowledge that exists, that would be your first place to go.
And also you have to ask questions, right? If something is not clear to you, if one group is doing something certain way, try and understand why they are doing certain things. If it's not clear, ask questions. How come this is that? How come that is that? Before you can bring your judgments and your conclusion. So if you don't understand the whole story, you tend to judge wrongly. So if something is not clear, you ask questions and you try to understand the situation and understand why people are doing what they're doing before you judge.
Yeah, but I would not even judge at all. If you don't understand, just hold your peace before you make any judgments that will hurt you. And then also share stories. Let's share stories, personal narratives. If you have an African American friend, share some of the personal narratives. Build and empathetic relationship. Understand them from where they're coming from, each other, wherever, whether you have an African immigrant friend or an African American friend. Be empathetic towards their experiences, and then remove certain abstract arguments that do not exist. Some of them have been made for years that they are not true. All right. Okay.
And there are certain experiences or things that had happened to their family or their cousins. Maybe shooting has happened in the family, and that has created this thing in them, that pain deep down seated in them. And because of that, they act certain way. Like you're saying that, when a police stop you, there's certain things that you shouldn't do. You coming from outside, you don't have any history connecting to that situation. So you are calm, you are collected, you are all together, put together when the cop is talking to you. But somebody with past experience regarding shooting or maybe law and order, like law enforcement, right? The police, when they stop them, the way that they behave, maybe they have something, history, that you don't have. So they may behave certain way, tied to the previous experience in the family or in their culture,
in the society as a whole.
Yeah, so there are certain way that they behave that you may not know. So ask questions, and the African Americans should also tell their stories so that we will also understand why certain things are done certain way, so that we will each other be empathetic, right? And really be in their shoes and get certain things. And so that we will not be quick to judge, but we will listen and understand their situation.
Definitely. And then from that personal level, which is our homework for everybody, understanding each other. It's not just for the African Americans. For, if you live in a white neighborhood, we have white friends, try to understand people. In fact, not just people who are different from you, people who you disagree with, always creating that sense of understanding the person's perspective, a person's experience. Most of the things, psychiatrists, psychology will tell you that people's behaviors are basically shaped by their experiences. If you have a baby that cries a lot, it is from something. They just don't stand up and say, that's for me, I'll cry. Either they have been hungry so much, or something else is doing
them. Or
they
just like crying.
Or they just, no. It's well, if they just like crying, then something is making them just like crying. So everybody's action is from an experience, whether it's from their childhood or from, in this case, from systemic injustices that has been perpetuated for hundreds of years. Beginning all the way from Africa, where they are from, where people were stolen and put on the ship and then taken away. This is a traumatic experience right from there. And so it is not fair to just look at somebody and judge them, especially if you do not understand the experience. So the best way is to be friends and try to put yourself in their shoes. That is how you understand people's. And when you understand people's, way of experience and how they have experienced life, you will better understand why people act the way they do and potentially be able to help them, rather than to just judge them outright or cast them on the side and think that you are better than them. That is what is separating and dividing our communities, and we shouldn't do that. So now that we've finished with the personal ways to overcome, let's go to the community ways. And the community ways is to, for businesses to begin to forge partnerships. We have billionaires in Nigeria, billionaires in the US of African origin, who can become partners, in big businesses in the US and on the African continent. People should begin to forge that relationship and build great things. If we, this guy called Dangote, very rich man in Africa, is doing this big business. He can, have some, I don't know who he has helping him do his business, but he can harness the use of these skilled African Americans who are here. And, it may just be like employing them, but before you know, it brings that cooperation, and the trust that we need them to have on the continent. Similarly, billionaires here who are also of African origin, like our brother Elon Musk, can help forge this unity by also teaming up with corporations, not just in South Africa, but on the continent, anywhere in Africa, and build businesses that can also not just raise the standard of living of the very people who are there, but also bring the understanding and the friendship together. And when we lead that, then the government will follow, like the US government will follow, because they know that it's helping their citizens. But if we begin to pitch ourselves against each other, then they will think that there's no need to even do that. So business partnership is one, and then
cultural celebrations, you know. So we can host events that honor both Africans and African Americans traditions, you know. So highlighting and connection between the two. So they will learn about our culture, and we also learn about their culture. You know, traditionally, I think there are a few things that they do here, but we do a whole lot in Africa. So there can be a cultural celebration so that they will understand our culture and tend to, you know where they're coming from. And that can be something that will bring us together as one people.
That's very good. That's very good. Very good. So cultural celebrations. And I think they've started a few ones in which I think those guys that go to Ghana to do it, they are Ghanaian Americans. In other words, they were born here, but their parents are from Ghana. And they are doing these trips to Ghana, bringing along a huge number of African American artists to go play. These are simple things that we can do. And I think it's called Afrochella or something like that. Very popular in December around there.
When they go back
for Christmas and they party and all that. But it's not just enough to party. After the party, let's do other things, businesses, you know. So yeah, cultural celebrations is something that we need to do. And then obviously political coalitions, as we alluded to, you know, forming groups that will help, you know, increase the welfare or the plight of the African American voting bloc by harnessing the voting bloc or voting groups of African people of African descent, recent migrants, I should say, that are citizens to help their cause, right? All right. So, you have anything else to add to that? Oh.
I think we should end.
So the next one is educational exchange. You know, before we end, we also talk about, you know, steady exchanges. Colleges should begin to cooperate with each other. African American colleges, you know, historically Black colleges, I should say, should continue to foster exchange with top African universities to bring more understanding between these groups, and that will also foster understanding. If you have African Americans studying at Legon, you know, University of Ghana, or University of Science and Technology in Kumasi in Ghana, by the time they come back, even if it's a few months, they will understand the continent and the people more, and they will be better suited to, you know, form business partnerships with people they've been in school with or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, and then the same can happen, giving scholarship to Africans to also go to these universities in the US and learn the culture of African Americans and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think of late there's a lot of exchange programs happening that a lot more Africans are coming over, you know, and sometimes when they come, it become a little challenge assimilating to the system. That can be a little challenge. But I think the more that we do it, we get to know the environment and try to forge collaboration between the African Americans here so that we all feel together, be together as one people.
Definitely. And yeah, so the recent some of these students that are coming are not coming to historically Black institutions. That's where my point is, you know, they just go to every university that would take them. But I think the historically Black colleges should actually take it upon themselves to recruit, you know, top-notch students from Africa to their schools so that they will come and be part of their communities. And, you know, if it's 4 years and they come to study, they will learn a lot about the African American experience. And then they will take it home. Even if they don't take it home and they serve here, at least you have seen what it is to contribute to the society here. So that is where I'm going with. All right, it looks like we have exhausted a lot of these questions that you may have. And I'm pretty sure we cannot exhaust everything. And so this is where we want to pitch the tent today. That's a good way to say it. We want to end the show this way. But I feel like there's a lot more that could be said. And so if you are watching, make sure that you put your own ideas in the chat. And not just that, don't forget to hit the subscribe and the like buttons. When you hit the buttons that says thumbs up or subscribe, then the algorithm will share so that we educate more of our people in this way. And we have several things planned up for future shows. So if you enjoyed this, or if you watched all the way to this point, then we know you took something. Put your own question, comment, and everything in there. But don't forget to subscribe because you have a lot more to share in the near future. And we want to say thank you for spending your time with us. And we conclude by saying, Beloved, we wish above all things that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.